Good afternoon. My name is Brian Johnson. I am the city manager here in the great city of Peachtree Corners, Georgia. I'm here on behalf of the mayor and city council of Georgia to talk to you about some unprecedented times that we're currently living in. As you all know, I'm referring to this coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic that we're dealing with. I'm talking to you as subsequent to an emergency called city council meeting. The mayor and city council just held telephonically, but that meeting's purpose was for us to adopt some restrictions as it relates to activity out in the community. And these restrictions are or were adopted to help prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus, for there to be some guidelines on how the stakeholders within our community, and that goes from residents to employees, business owners, people who are just passing through or visiting, shopping, eating in restaurants, but to provide guidance on how activity within our community should be taking place and the restrictions thereof, so that we can do our part to prevent the spread and for us to be all on the same page so that we know what we can and can't do. Prior to the meeting, there has been a lot of conversation amongst the elected body of this municipality on how to balance between having a community that is a great place to live, work, learn, and play, but yet restricted enough that we might prevent any spread of this virus without harming our local economy. And that's not as easy as a lot of times people think. An example of that would be, we have certain businesses in the community that are tenants that have lease agreements. Even within the same industry, we have tenants that will have a stipulation in their lease that if their business is closed down, if it's imposed on them, that they can exercise a portion of their lease to gain relief from certain payments, like their lease payments. So on one hand, mayor and council have been pressured by some of those to say, hey, please close us down, prevent there from being our activity, because we could then exercise that lease provision. But on the other hand, we have other ones, even within the same industries, who are like, please don't do anything to further restrict what we're already dealing with, because we're on a razor thin margin. We've let people go. We're not creating large groups. We're taking, steps to keep distance. Please don't impose your will on us. Let us find the best way to do it in a safe way. I only say that to say there's not one size that fits all. It's difficult to balance the two, because we have public health and safety. We also have an economy that we all know we're going to have to deal with when we're all said and done. And so mayor and council have been taking it very serious. And for those of you who've been watching, you know that this is not unique to us. All cities and counties are dealing with it. The state and national governments worldwide are struggling with how little or how much restriction they should impose. That being said, there has been some recent agreement that within the city of Peachtree Corners, as well as within Gwinnett County, within which we are located, that there needed to be an emergency declaration of some sort, so that kind of officially our municipality is kind of telling the world, hey, we consider this pandemic a local emergency. And beyond that is to adopt some restrictions that help guide activity within the city and maybe further prevent the spread of any virus. We've had a number of events within the last week that have played into the decision that council just made. First, we'll go back to this past Saturday. Mayor and council held a special called meeting in which they did in fact adopt an emergency ordinance which laid out a number of things for the city to use and created some tools that we can use at our disposal to help maybe get us through this. Some of the main things from this declaration, beyond declaring that this pandemic does in fact pose a clear and present danger to the public health of Peachtree Corners, it did allow for some flexibility when it comes to procurement and contracting. It did minimize the effects of administrative delays as it relates to things like getting in front of planning commission, zoning board of appeals, getting certain things done that the construction industry and the development community, which in some cases are still going, it allowed us some greater flexibility to ensure that our operations or any restrictions that we find ourselves in are not going to do anything to slow down that activity within the community. We are blessed to have a lot of construction activity in the city going on right now. We certainly don't want as a city to be the ones to inhibit that in any way. So the emergency declaration of Saturday also extended some existing regulatory permits, prevented them from expiring of natural causes. It granted the city manager, with the approval of the mayor, the authority to take certain actions deemed necessary or appropriate for public health and safety of the residents of the city. So if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to move very quickly, that was placed in there so that we can move very quickly if necessary. And then from the Saturday's emergency declaration, there's probably two things of note that came out of it. One is it does allow city council to conduct meetings via video teleconference or just teleconference. The meeting that they just held was in fact the first time that it has happened within this municipality. And we did, as an emergency meeting, prior to the meeting being held, there was notification to the press and publishing it on our website. So even though it was done in a accelerated or condensed time frame, there was the ability, because our announcement had the call-in number and the access code, somebody from the community or the media could have called in and may have called in, we don't know, and could have listened in on that. I do know the mayor and council are committed to trying to do that as little as is possible. But in this case, they needed to. So that was one, is allowed us to do that. And the second thing is it did, in fact, permit alcohol to be sold by establishments that were permitted for on-premise consumption to sell it for off-premise consumption. So I'll read the language from this section. It said, if a business is licensed by the city to sell alcohol for on-premise consumption, such business, during the efficacy of this emergency ordinance only, shall be authorized to sell unopened bottles or otherwise appropriately sealed containers of alcohol for takeaway for consumption off-premise. Any alcohol licensee who engages in a course of conduct permitted under this section does so at the licensee's own peril, as it concerns the licensee's state liquor license. The ordinance makes no representation as to the legality under state law and state alcohol license of any course of conduct undertaken pursuant to this section. So essentially what we have done, or what mayor and council did with that ordinance, is allowed restaurants who previously had been able to serve alcohol for you to consume on premise, allowed them to go to a takeout or to-go method, and then they could sell that for people to come pick up and take home. Now, at that point, Saturday's event came and went, and then on Monday, the governor of Georgia, Governor Kemp, had a press conference in which he issued some executive orders that, in fact, do have applicability here within the city of Peachtree Corners. And so mayor and council had wanted to wait to see what that press conference entailed and to see what, if any, of his executive order were in keeping with where their mind was, their thinking was, as it relates to how we're going to deal with the spread of this coronavirus. At the end of that, there was some conversation within Gwinnett County, between all the cities in Gwinnett County and Gwinnett County government, for there to be maybe an additional level of restrictions that are adopted within the Gwinnett County municipality, all the municipalities in Gwinnett County and the unincorporated area, an extra set of restrictions, because there seemed to be a consensus that the state had not mandated enough. And so there came to be that all the municipalities agreed that we should be in keeping with Gwinnett counties, so that all the municipalities in Gwinnett County and inside the city limits of each municipality are similar in their restrictions. And so at noon today, Gwinnett County went live with an executive order issued by the chair of the Gwinnett County Commission. And we have subsequently held an emergency call meeting at 3 p.m. today for mayor and council to adopt similar restrictions that mirror what Gwinnett County did. And those restrictions are a number of things. One is maybe the one that a lot of people have wondered, and that is this restriction that council just adopted that does in fact apply inside the city. It restricts restaurants, food courts, brew pubs, breweries, and other eating establishments within the city, restricts them from offering dine-in and or outdoor and patio service. They can continue to prepare and offer food to customers through delivery, takeout, and drive-through, but there's no more dine-in service within the city limits of Peachtree Corners. There were some additional aspects of the ordinance, this second emergency ordinance that council adopted today. The on-site dining within hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, other similar facilities within the city are exempt from that restriction just because they serve a greater purpose. And all the employers and businesses within the city which are remaining open for use by the public must take necessary steps to restrict in-person contact and maintain 6 feet between individuals while in the establishment. So that's not a voluntary step anymore. That is mandatory to maintain a 6-foot distance. Now, it's important to note that the governor's executive order had a couple of other things that are included in ours, but I do want to mention here, and that is the governor did issue a shelter-in-place order for people who are in certain categories, like those who live in nursing home or long-term health care facilities, who have chronic lung or respiratory disease, currently undergoing cancer treatment, ones who have a compromised immune system. There is a shelter-in-place order there. Bars were closed by the governor, but just so that you know, we don't have any locations within Peachtree Corners that do meet the definition of a bar. A bar would be one that does not generate more than half of its revenue from something other than the sale of alcohol. And then the governor's executive order did have a provision that says the following: no business establishment, corporation, nonprofit, corporation, or organization shall allow more than 10 persons to be gathered at a single location if such gathering requires persons to stand or be seated within 6 feet of any other person. So his executive order said, as long as you stay 6 feet apart, essentially there is no limit to how many people can be together as long as they're 6 feet apart. If they can't be 6 feet apart, then it's limited to 10. Now, these orders that came from the emergency ordinance that was adopted today has one other things to consider, and that is the city also, in addition to including the governor's executive orders, the things that I've also talked about, it did temporarily close, and by temporary, I mean for the duration of this emergency ordinance. It temporarily closed gyms, fitness centers, fitness studios, theaters, live performance venues, bowling alleys, arcades, and other similar establishments within the city. So that is really at the end what ultimately came out from the emergency ordinance. Now, there's going to be a lot of questions. The city is going to do the best that we can to answer them. This is a fluid situation, as we all know. What we want to do is, again, mayor and council's, challenge here is to balance the local economy, local businesses, many of which have lots of employees who may not even have a safety net, cannot afford not to work for long periods of time, to try to balance that with the health and well-being of our residents, citizens, and really, people in our country. And so, I do ask that you pray for them to govern accordingly. They're doing the best that they can. They're doing unbelievable work. They're very interested in getting through this with as much, or with as least amount of long-term problems as we can possibly get, and we'll get through it all together. We got a great community. There's already examples of nonprofits, neighborhood associations, others that are doing things to better the community. In the next day or two, we will be issuing some information about some of the things that mayor and council have done as a way to help out our local economy, that we've been doing in-house as it relates to monies owed the city and how we're working with local businesses to maybe make it a little bit easier. More information to follow. There may be another Facebook Live post to discuss some of those preemptive moves that City Council's doing to try and prop up our local economy as much as we can help prop it up. And so more to follow in the interim. Just as a reminder, you can go to our website. We actually have a specific page dedicated to COVID-19 and coronavirus, in which we have a lot of links to really some of the public health, clearinghouses for information and authorities on this topic, like the Centers for Disease Control, the State Department of Public Health, County Health Department, things like that. So I encourage you to continue to go to those sites directly or use our website as a way to get to them. Please continue to use the guidelines, even if some of them are voluntary, but use the guidelines that are set forth about distance and the total number of assembly. And definitely you'll be able to go to our website very soon and pull a copy of the ordinance and look at the restrictions. Please adhere to them. I have been given the authority to use both Gwinnett County PD and the city's code enforcement department to enforce these. So if you do fall into a category that this affects, just know that it's done in the for the greater good. But continue to wash your hands. If you don't feel well, please do not go around groups where there's other people, so that you can maybe spread this. And let's practice those common sense things to prevent this virus from getting any more prominent in our community, and let's kill it quickly and get back to life and doing the great, wonderful things that we're doing here. So appreciate your time. Look forward to continuing to convey information to you as information comes to us. And again, on behalf of the mayor and city council of Peachtree Corners, thanks for being a part of our great community, and may God bless you.